Like it or not, we find ourselves living in the age of artificial intelligence. From our personal lives to our business processes, AI has made huge inroads in a relatively short space of time, evolving from a science fiction to an everyday fact. Now, do I expect AI to be planning complex demolition processes anytime soon? No. Do I anticipate a time when AI can replicate the skill of an experienced demolition engineer? No. Do I think AI is equipped to handle soul-destroying, labour-intensive and repetitive administrative tasks? Yes. Yes, I do. Which is why I was so keen to speak to Rory Kilpatrick at Tendermole. Rory has devised an AI specifically to help demolition contractors tackle the burdensome process of responding to tender requests using their own company information. The system is already in operation within the demolition sector, and it's already winning work and freeing up time. So, fresh off the back of his presentation at the Institute of Demolition Engineers Autumn Seminar in London, we caught up with Rory Kilpatrick to get the lowdown on Tendermole. I guess the first and most obvious question for the uninitiated, what actually is Tendermole?
So it's an end-to-end bid response platform. So it essentially allows individuals to just ask questions. They can upload a tender. The tender goes into an AI, and then they can ask the questions from the tender using the combination of the AI for the tender itself and the repository, so the company information. It will formulate answers for them. So quite simply, that's what it does. It's set up so that you literally you upload your tender, you add a question, you click answer, and that's it. It's done.
And where is it drawing those answers from?
So you upload your tender, you upload all of your company documents to an AI. It literally takes 20 minutes and then it's done. You don't have to do it again. And then each time you get a tender come through, you upload all of those documents into a separate AI. And I'll show you how it works, but it's dead simple. It's quite complicated the way that it works in the background, but it's a product that's intended for all audiences. So it's specifically being designed with user experience in mind. So it's got to be as easy as possible to use. And I think we've achieved that. There are lots of other tools in the app that really sort of pad it out. But in terms of getting responses for tenders, you can do it very quickly, very simply.
What was the inspiration behind it? Were you a former bid writer or something like that?
So my background's IT services. I've been in the IT space for 30 years now. And I was head of technology and innovation for Rico Europe, and I've always ran large technical teams and been responsible for building, developing, and deploying applications globally. So that's my background. But actually, the business case, if you will, came from my partner. My partner works for a demolition company, and I mentioned it on the day. We go for a walk with the dogs every night for an hour. And I can honestly say, for every one of those hours for the last 2 years, she spent it moaning about how many tenders she's got on. So with my background, I also code as well. With my background, I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll go away and I'll look at the market and I'll see what's out there, because there's got to be something that can do this for us, given where we are with AI at the moment. But there wasn't. There are lots of products that have a bit of AI attached. So they'll do spell checking or they might make suggestions for you. But there were no products that were just doing the end-to-end response for you. And of course, these existing products, they're very expensive to pay for in the first instance and then to maintain. So I just saw it as a great opportunity. If you build on AI from the ground up, then you're in a really good place, because it's, I used the analogy the other day, it's like attaching a turbo to a 1940s Ford car. You'll get some gains, but you won't get much of a gain. Whereas if you start with a turbo and then you build the car around it, you're absolutely going to get manufacturer spec for the turbo. You're really going to get the best out of it. And that's what we've been able to do with Tendermole. Is we start with AI and we've built the rest of the product around AI. So it's fundamental, it's core to everything that we do. And actually, if we've got time, I've got a little page that sort of explains how it works, which I think is useful, because then you can, a lot of people, certainly in the industry that I came from, they use Copilot and ChatGPT, and they use it in some intricate and clever ways. But Tendermole is fundamentally different to the way that those solutions work by a country mile. And it's evidenced in the output that we get and the way that the whole app works. Yeah, so that's where it came from. My partner is a bid writer, and I built it specifically at the time for the demolition industry. I know the owners of the organisation, good friends of mine, wanted to do right by them. wanted to help everyone out in the business, and we've achieved that. So their average scores on their tenders at the moment are the highest they've been in 3 years. They've received 2 responses back in the last 6 weeks that have scored at 100% for quality. So unfortunately, I can't help the pricing. I can certainly help with the quality of the documents that goes back. And they think that they're saving upwards of 80% in terms of time spent answering tenders. So it's having a substantial impact on the business. And obviously all of that equates to money. It allows them the time to give better tender responses, create better tender responses, put their company stamp on them a bit more, and also bid for more business as well. Because the way the economy is at the moment, everybody's got to go for what they can do. So again, if I can give you back 80% of your time to go chasing other business, then again, it's got to be a bonus. It's got to be of value.
It's an interesting point, because if I were an expert in AI, I would have thought that demolition would be the last industry sector that I would have considered tackling. And yet, as you say, with your connections and given the timing, given the fact that it is hard out there, maybe it makes a bit more sense.
I was at the IDEA event the other week, and the thing I took away from the event was it was a room of forward-thinking people. There's a certain sort of image that's attached to the industry, and it's anything but that. They're all looking forward to new technologies, new ways of supporting sustainability and things like that. There were young people in the room, there were older people in the room with lots of experience, and they're trying to pass that experience down to the younger people. So personally, I think it's, and also I understand most of the business that the sort of demolition industry are chasing comes in the form of a tender of some sort or another, especially when you're dealing with the public sector. So it's almost the perfect industry. E-services, my background. Again, they're responding to tenders all the time, but I can categorically state that they haven't took up on AI as quickly as been demonstrated to me in the past few weeks, and more for them.
Okay, so I tell you what, without further ado, let's take a look. If you are able to share your screen.
The whole point, as I said, was to make it as simple as possible to use, and the key differentiator for me needed to be that it did end-to-end responses. And what I mean by end-to-end responses is everything from receiving the tender to the point where it goes out of the door, and it does all of that. So on the right there is just the sort of screenshot, but I'll show you a bit more. The way that the system works is, as I said, you literally upload a tender, you add the question, click answer, and it's done. You do have to cut and paste your questions in there. We don't do it all for you. But again, it gives you an element of control because you can adapt the questions if you want to. But the important bit that I wanted to just show, just to distinguish between the systems, and I'll just run quickly through it. But this is what an AI native system looks like. So this is what TenderMold looks like, which is fundamentally different to standard AI. The very first thing that I do is I ingest the tender document itself into its own AI. And the reason I do that is so now I know every word, every sentence, every paragraph in that document, and semantically what it all means and contextually what it all means. And the reason that's important is because if your question on your tender document says, tell us how you plan to demolish the hospital, for example, it's a bit of a rubbish example, but tell us how you intend to demolish the hospital. The context might be that the hospital's on a main road, it's next to a school, and it contains hazardous materials as well. So if those points aren't addressed in your response, then it's obviously going to be wrong, or it's going to have insufficient detail in there. So the very first thing we do is we wrap the context around the question, so you've got a contextually correct question in the system. Then you can do things like add win themes. So a win theme might be, we've recently won a health and safety award. That would be a great thing to weave into the response if you're removing hazardous materials next to a school. You can also add sentiment. So sentiment is the language that it uses. So if it's a deeply technical question, you might want to use a technical sentiment. Then probably one of the most important features on the site is this human. So human, if you took a ChatGPT document and you tested it against an AI checker, it'd come back at 70 to 90% written by AI. If a human wrote the document, it'd be between 27 and 35% written by AI. TenderMold produces generally 30 to 35%. At a push, it might push up to 39. So to all intents and purposes, it's been written by a human. That then, we've only just started, so that's your enhanced question that you've got. Then, as we were talking about just, it goes into the repository and the tender RFP, and the question is bounced between the two, and it does a thing called cosine similarity, but that's how AIs work with each other. They work out what the correct words are in the sentences to use for the response. So that response, at this point, is a really good response, but there's another check that we force it to go through, which is this AI here, as strange as it sounds, thinks that it's a purchasing director. minutes that it's written this RFP. What it's going to do is it's going to take your response and it's going to score it against what it believes the outcomes are for that tender. So it will give you suggestions. So it might say you might want to emphasize this point here, but more importantly, it might say you've missed something. So again, that's an iterative loop then. So you can make your responses better and better as it goes through the system. Then it comes out, we top and tail it with a final AI, and you've got your final response. But as you can see, this is one section of the site, and there's multiple AIs all working with and against each other, testing each other to get you the very best response. In terms of the way that the app works, it's really quite simple. These are the two main areas that people use. You've got the tender section, and you've got the scratchpad, which I'll touch on in a second. But the tenders area, as you'd expect, you've got your standard customers. These are some example customers. You can add new customers, just a bit of information, and it will load up like this. You can go into them. You can add customer logo. You can add your contacts. It's got a location map. You've got various areas here where the files are stored from the system. And you'd quite simply go in, add new project. If we did IDE example, and then we just, the submission date, let's say it's sometime next week or this week, and the award date, then you quite simply drop in your address details, the postcode, and that's it, add the project. So you can see we've not started that project yet. It's in there. We'll just click on that. In this section, you can add those WIM themes that we were talking about, a project team. You can change your submission dates if you wanted to. But this is the bit where the magic happens, let's say. This is where your RFI, RFP documents go. So the document that I'm going to upload is this one. It's not a demolition document because obviously to share tenders from the industry and use information from the industry. So this is an IT services one. Now this document here, it's a PDF. You can see there's lots of images and various bits of information in here. And believe me, it's actually quite technical. Given my background, I know that it would take the best part of a week to respond to this. And the joke of it is, it's an RFI. It's only got 6 questions. In fact, I'll clip one of those while we're here. It's only got 6 questions, but they want 1,000 words for each question. So it's a painful RFI, and it's not even the RFP, it's just the first pass. So you can see there's quite a lot of information in there. Now, all I would do is I go in here, choose files. That'll come up. I search for that file. It's called ng something or other, so that'll come up now. This document here, if I open that, so you can see it's been selected. All I do now is click save. And that's it. It's in the AI, done. So I know every word, every sentence, every paragraph, and what it all means now. If I wanted to, I could do a go, no go analysis, and it would rip that document and it would pull lots of information out of there. If I needed clarification questions, it would do the same. And also, if this document came with a set of legals, I could compare them to ours, and it would flag up immediately as to where the sticking points were. So you'd know quite early on that maybe you didn't want to go for this because they've got unlimited liability, let's say, which you wouldn't sign up to. So if I wanted to add a question now, just go to questions, paste in that question that you saw me cut a second ago, add new question. So here we can set a due date if we want to, and it will log on the system. The max words, they wanted 1,000 words if you remember. You can add the weighting if you want as well. And here you get to choose your AI model. You've got smart, intelligent, and thoughtful. Your style, your sentiments. Choose what you want. If it, for example, if it was sales that you chose, it pull on the value statements in your business in terms of the offerings for the customer. And so it mixes the language up for you. But it really is as simple as that. In fact, we'll use the intelligent model. If I just click auto answer now, that's it. So you saw me upload the document. I added the question. Now click answer. This will take 15 to 20 seconds or so to respond to. It's going through that process that we were talking about in the back end. It's taking the original documents, it's taking the context from that, wrapping it around the question, and then it's bouncing it between the various AIs to come up with the best possible response for us. And this is always where I get nervous. It's never ever let me down, but I do get nervous. I was even nervous the other week when it was pre-recorded, so it's just one of those. But yeah, so and what you can do, if let's say it was 20 questions, let's say you'd load up your 20 questions and you just move down this page, and at the point where you were happy with it, you just click on export Q&A, and it will work nicely for you. He says,
I'll time lapse this bit or something.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it will come back. It's if there's any reason why, it's because there's a ton of people on in the background, but there you go. So what you can see straight away is it's referring to the customer. So I haven't given it that information. It's pulled that information from the documents, and it will refer to for example, their aims, which are also outlined in the documents. So it's gone to a level of context and nuance and understanding that actually you could, if you were very good at your job, you could probably do yourself, but actually it's going to pick up more than you would probably pick up from the documents. It's also picked up how many applications that they had that they wanted to do on the migration. So it does all of that for you. And as you see down here in the bottom corner, it's got 33 out of 100, so it's got a low AI lightness. And if I wanted to, I could look at the markers and you can change various bits and pieces. It also tells me where in my repository it sourced the information from, so what documents it used to get the information. So all of that's great. It decided that it only needed 621 words, and that's what it'll do. If it feels it needs 621 words, it will use 621 words. If I now click on, mark my answer is this purchasing director that we were talking about. So I now click on that. It's testing the response versus what it believes the outcomes on the tender were. So it's actually given an 8 out of 10. It provides a detailed example of a cloud migration project executed in the last 2 years, blah, 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 blah. However, suggestions for improvement include more explicit evidence of experience in multi-cloud environments, or the other one. And all I would do there is I click that, click on incorporate and retest, and that's it. It would create, oh, it did by accident actually. It will create a V2. And then if I don't like V2, I can just roll back to V1. So again, it's all version controlled as it's going through the system. But that's quite simply how it all works. And then when you're happy with it, just click on export Q&A, and you'll end up with, I'll just drag it across, a nice Word document.
It even lays it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've also got, if I go to here, and this takes a touch longer, but I think this is really important for a lot of organizations, because let's say you do your tender response, and then 4 weeks later, you get the phone call, great job, really liked what you'd sent in to us. We'd like you to come down next week and present to us your solution. So the problem with that is you're already busy because you've already got a ton of tenders on. So somebody now has to go back and read the original documents. They've got to read your response. And then someone's got to pull together a deck with some sort of storyline to it that you're now going to present to the customer. So how do you go about doing that? TenderMole will do all of that for you. So what it's going to do in a minute is it's going to come back with a best practice tender outline. And by best practice, it's going to produce a quantity of slides that have got between 3 and 6 bullet points on each slide. But the most important bit is at the bottom, it will have the notes and justification for each slide. So what you're going to be talking about on each slide. And obviously that's going to shortcut probably days of work for somebody. And again, it's the same situation where you can easily print it off into a Word document and you can send it around your business. Is this the approach that we want to take? Is it not the approach that we want to take? And take feedback from that. As I say, you may not use it, but it's a starter for 10. There you go. So this is standard on all of them. So this is just a bit of coaching as to how to produce a great sort of presentation, if you will do. But this is what it's produced. So this was from a complete document, a complete response of that document I've just shown you. It goes through each of the slides with the bullets that you should be using. And as you get to the bottom, these are your supporting notes. So what you should be talking about on each page. Then you can save that to the customer, or you can export it as a document. And exactly the same process as last time, depending on where it comes up. There it is. So the whole thing's just neatly laid out for you immediately. All those notes are in there. You can imagine you could save this, send it around the document. Is this the approach, or are we going to do it a different way? And if you wanted to, it'll produce just the bullets for the PowerPoint for you as well. So again, I would expect that you just copy and paste these into your company official documentation. But that's it. In terms of its core functionality, it's as simple as that. The most used part of the site is this Scratchpad. And the Scratchpad is non-tender related questions. So it searches the repository, but it doesn't require a tender document to go with it. So for example, current users build their method statements in here. You just have to be very clear about what it is you're looking for, what sort of response that you want. They build method statements, they build health and safety works, any sort of information that's you get asked over the phone, someone sends you an email through, how would you approach this? Or indeed, if you're using it just within your organization, it can all be asked in here. And actually, if you wanted it to write an email, you could say, I want to write an email to such and such a customer, and this is the thing that I want in the email. And again, it will pull on your repository. So the beauty of this is You can let anybody in the business use it, but they're using it within the guardrails of your company information. What it's not doing is it's not going to the web and saying we use X, Y, and Z machinery or plants, or we follow such and such a methodology. And when you don't actually as a business, it will pull all of the information from the repository.
I was just going to say very quickly, I think that's answered a question I've got in mind already. When I use AI, it does from time to time hallucinate. It doesn't have an answer, so it creates one. But I guess if it's only drawing from your repository, it's not able to do that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's because it's probabilistic as opposed to deterministic. What that means is it'll score the next word, the sentence, the answer, and if it can't achieve the sort of maximum score, it will go for the next best one, which is what hallucinations are. It will make up an answer. Believe me, I've been through. I was building this originally. The things it used to come back with, and that's obviously not true, but it's catching it. So a lot of what goes on in the background in this is explicit instructions to the AI as to what you can and can't do. And if you can't answer something, you just leave it blank. That's it, explicit. However, if you're on this page and you wanted to, if you change that to no, it's effectively ChatGPT. I've seen people on here searching for eye drops and organic dog foods and things like that. It ticks all of the boxes.
Trade, obviously.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does make you wonder sometimes. But yeah, and then along with that, you've got standard tools that you'd expect. You've got your calendar and all your award dates and submission dates and whatnot, and outstanding questions. You've got a Gantt section as well. You can add in your own projects. It doesn't have to be Tender Mole related projects. It could just be your own. So there's lots of other tools in here as well, which you can go through. But to be honest with you, that's the core functionality. That's the message that I want to get across to people. People have an issue responding to tenders at scale. And this is a tool that will take a multi-week process down to a couple of hours. I think I told you about the anecdote the other week where a customer got in touch with me. They had two days to respond to a tender. They got into it late. They wanted to go for it because it was right up their street. They got in touch with me. I was on holiday. I was in Wales with the dogs. And I said, can you jump on and help? I said, yeah, no, sure. Send it across to me. I've always got my laptop with me. Left the dogs with the missus and went into a cafe, 50 questions, which was a great start. I'm like, okay. But an hour later, I had the whole lot done. So then I got a phone call 2 weeks later to say, oh, you know that response you did for us? Can you send us the presentation as well? Because we're presenting it next week. Yeah, no trouble at all. Printed off the presentation, sent it across to them. Spoke to them the day after the presentation, and their response was, oh, it was brilliant. I wish we'd have read the document sooner than the day before the presentation. So they hadn't even read the document; they just submitted it. But the thing is, it was worth £15 million. So it's not a small, insignificant amount of money. So they're down to the final two now. Fingers crossed for them, they get it. That's not what the system's intended for. But equally, if you find yourself in a bit of a sticky place, it's more than capable of digging you out quite quickly. But yeah, so it's all about, the whole app is about saving time for people. That's it. Providing good, comprehensive responses in time.
I know in the aftermath of your presentation to the IDE, one of the first questions, which not surprisingly, I think, given the nature of all things computerized these days, was of security. Security of data, because obviously you are putting your information, I wouldn't say top secret, but certainly protected information in there. How safe is it?
It's extremely, everything's encrypted at every point. So you can't even access the hard drives unless it's via the app. So any information on any disk is fully encrypted. Anything in transit between disks and the servers themselves is encrypted. When it uses an external AI, which it will do for the final pass, it's called no trace left. So no information is left with the AI. And so no information is used for training. And every organization is completely demarcated. There isn't even a mechanism for data to be shared between organizations because they sit in their own indexes, their own AIs. So it's completely locked down in that respect. And also I've got security documents and things like that that go with it. But again, it's all reference architecture. It's all best practice in terms of how it's being set up, because having done it myself in the past and deployed these applications globally, it all has to be taken into account. For example, try dealing with France or Germany, and you'll soon see what security really means. They really do go to extreme degrees to make sure that data is protected. So I just adopted all of that and I built it into the app from the start rather than trying to tack it all on after. So yeah, it's extremely secure.
One of the first questions I asked you after your presentation was, can it cope with PQQs? Because obviously tender submissions are a major ball ache, but PQQs are equally a ball ache. Can it cope with PQQs?
Funnily enough, yeah, you sparked a thought in my mind on that. You weren't the first person to ask, but it was definitely something that I wanted to address. However, it is very hard to address, and it is actually in the application now. So you can set up essentially your company profile for PQQs, and then you can effectively cut and paste the questions across from an ITT PQQ, and it will automatically answer all those questions for you, and then you can save them out of the system. So again, you weren't the only person. So you mentioned that to me, and it sparked thought. And then I bet you've spoken to 3 or 4 people since that have talked about PQQs and ITTs with lots of expletives mixed into the conversation also.
Usually are.
yeah. Because it's that sort of repetitive, sort of boring information that everybody's got somewhere, and it might be spread across multiple files in different places in the business, and it's just the pulling it all together. So the system does that. There's a single place on the system where it's all kept now, and as I say, it will cover the bulk of it for you quite simply.
It occurred to me when you demonstrated this before that this potentially levels the playing field, and I see that as both a good thing and potentially a bad thing. I think you've got the bigger companies in the demolition industry that have got their own departments dedicated to completing tender submissions and PQQs, who up until now have had an advantage. So you've now got the opportunity for smaller companies to compete on that level playing field, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if it actually you could end up with, I don't know, less experienced, less competent, possibly even less reputable firms using the system to make themselves look every bit as good as some of the absolute elite firms in the industry. I realise it's the same as anything computerized. It's crap in, crap out. So, if they're putting crap in, they're going to get a crap submission. But if they were to spend some time and some money with you guys, you could have some lesser quality companies competing on a level playing field.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. And that's a multi-part sort of statement that you've made there. The first point is with regards to the level playing field. It's not level at the moment. Business is a race, isn't it? It's competitive. I always say to people, if you and I are going to race to France now, are you going to swim or are you going to jump on a plane? You're going to jump on a plane. And it's exactly the same with AI. It's out there, it's working. Use AI or you will get left behind. You're not going to win that race. With regards to, funnily enough, I had this conversation with a very senior person in a large British telecommunications company the other week. And his concern was that he had large teams responding to tenders. And a lot of the creative element happens when they're working together on a tender. And he was worried that AI would lose that for him. He'd lose that sort of edge when he's responding to tenders. And my point was, well, okay, so of those 15 people, how long does it take the 15 people? Let's say you've got a 6-week process. How long does it take those 15 people to come up to speed with what's being asked for, then to find the information, then to pull it all together, and then to produce some sort of response by which they can then start being creative with? And his response was, it's got to be the best part of 3 to 4 weeks. If you started the process with TenderMole, it would do it in 3 to 4 hours for you, which would give you back 6 weeks to be creative. That's the difference. You don't lose anything. In fact, you gain. So where these good companies would spend that extra time building a better response and putting their company stamp on things, you're right, some of these other organizations would just start banging them out the door. But it would become apparent quite quickly who was spending the sort of gained time actually topping and tailing the tender in an appropriate fashion. So TenderMole gives you your first draft. You can send it in as a final if you wanted to, but personally, I think you get more value from it if you then worked on the tender. It gives you the time back for you to spend more time as a bid writer or a tender manager doing your job, which is building bid-winning responses. That would be my response.
That kind of answers my next question, because I thought the AI recognition score was very good anyway. And I must say, I say this as a fan and a regular user of AI.
Yeah.
If I see something that I believe to have been written by an AI, I switch off. That's me.
It's obvious, yeah.
I guess, is there not a danger that you could end up with clients doing likewise? And I know somebody asked this question at the IDE. Could we get to the point where as an industry, we're submitting AI-generated tender submissions that they could be analysed at the client end by an AI if they're not already?
Yeah, absolutely. From my point of view, what I can guarantee is that I'll be doing more checks than their AI will be as to whether it's being produced by AI or not. But again, I'm not doing it to cheat the system. I'm doing it to get the bid writer to the closest possible point to a finished response. As I say, the onus is on the bid writer to make it the final response. But what I didn't want to do was produce obviously AI responses, which they then got to do a lot of work on to remove the M-dashes and things like that from it. Because like you say, you can spot an AI produced document a mile off, and it really does turn people off because it just stinks of, I haven't made the effort. Whereas what we want with Tendermole is do all of that heavy lifting early doors for the bid writer so that they can spend time on it and make it into that winning response. But yeah, there's going to be an ongoing struggle. But the simple fact of the matter is, if you think about AI is trying everything as much as possible to be more human-like. So at some point, it'll be scoring the same as a human. So how do you determine which was a human and which was an AI writing it? Because if AI is as good as it's going to be, it will essentially be a human response. And that's what we're trying to achieve with Tendermole. That's why we measure every response to make sure that it's as close as possible to human. You won't be able to distinguish between the two. In fact, where it does fall down for people is in the presentation stages. So if you go and present your solution, not really knowing what it was you produced in your response, you could get found out at that point. So again, I would spend the time saved reading through the documents and actually understanding what it is you're proposing to the customer.
I guess all of that brings up the subject of filthy lucre. How much does it cost? And how do you buy this? Do you have it installed on a computer, or is it a licensing? What's the deal with that?
No, so it's all web-based. So you log into it and it's all extremely secure. It's got multi-factor authentication for admin users. So anybody that's actually in control of data, they have to use their devices and whatnot to log onto it. So it's very secure in that respect. It's £125 per user per month. It's a subscription agreement, so there's no long-term contracts. The whole point of building Tendermole was that I wanted it to be valuable to the users. So if they're finding that it's not valuable anymore, they can switch it off. Or if they go for a quiet period, which is often the case, you have a month or two where you're extremely busy, you got a load of tenders in, and then it goes quiet for a period of time. You can just switch off the licenses. So I wanted people to use it because it was valuable to them, not because they were tied into a multi-year agreement. And £125 per user per month is substantially cheaper than the existing products out there that don't even have AI in them, or if they do, it's literally a spell checker. But again, the reason that I can support the low pricing is because it's all built on AI. I'm not maintaining legacy technical debt. I don't have an existing product that I have to keep on maintaining. And I've built all of the technology myself. So again, I'm not paying other companies to do the work for me. So we're able to maintain a very low competitive price whilst offering all the features and tools and more than you'd get on any other product in the market. And I think that's evidenced in the uptake that I've had recently. It's really, the whole thing's taken off because of the quality of the responses, to be honest with you.
The world is your oyster here, really, isn't it? Because I know we're talking specifically here about its application in demolition. This has applications right across industry, but also, given the fact that it's driven by AI, even things like language barrier are not a barrier. You could replicate this in German, Spanish, Italian, Esperanto tomorrow.
Next weekend, funnily enough. I'm dropping in multilingual module next weekend. So I've got a couple of potential customers in Europe. And funnily enough, they respond to tenders internally in English, but they submit in local language. So I'll build all of that into the app over the next weekend, and they'll be able to do that. But you're absolutely right. And what it's key to point out, actually, that the AIs are trained on your company data, your company files. So it doesn't matter if one of my customers is a multi-billion pound IT services organization, one of the biggest in the UK. But equally, I've got a prospect that we're working with at the moment who sell chickens to essentially prisons and things like that. So it works for anybody. And believe me, they're only a couple of £1 million. So it really doesn't matter. The whole fact, it's SaaS applications, it's software as a service, and it grows and scales to your requirements. And in the back end, because of the way it's set up, if I get 1,000 users come on tomorrow, it'll just scale. I'll use the same infrastructure as Netflix, let's put it that way. So you know how Netflix scales. My system scales in exactly the same way. If there's a deluge of people come on board, it just scales to the size that it needs to scale up to deliver the service. So it works for anybody. And as I say, you're right. I think the world is our oyster. It's just getting the message out there, obviously, and especially at the price point. I think we really have got a great opportunity to grow in any market, to be honest with you.
So with that being said, I guess the final question is, where can people find out more?
It's www.tendermole.com. Simple as that. Or contact me directly. I'm on LinkedIn. So it's Rory Kilpatrick. Yeah, that's it, to be honest with you.
I'll just remind people of that. There you are, Rory at Tendermole. Rory, I really appreciate your time today. And I have to say, the reason I've had you on was because I did see your presentation at the IDE, and it really stuck with me because it's a bit of the business that nobody ever talks about. We talk about the hazards and the risks and the hard work that's involved on site. But in order to get on site, you've got to do all this kind of stuff in the first place. And it's the unseen struggle, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not sexy, is it? You've got some great plant equipment. I've been watching your shows and you're talking about all of the diggers and all that. So it's all amazing. But you're right. There's a bunch of people in the back office that have the weight of the world or the weight of the business essentially on their shoulders every day. And the way industry is, I know from experience, people are having to just pump for business essentially. They might not have a chance of winning the business, but they've got to go for it anyway. So what's the mechanism to be able to do that more quickly and more effectively for those people in the office? And using something like Tendermole, you've only got to win one piece of business and it's paid for itself for the year. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The unsung heroes, if you will do. And also my experience, what I'm seeing is where there's lots of tenders coming on, it's dragging other people in from the rest of the business as well. So senior managers are having to get involved. There's a tunneling company that I work with locally, and the owners of the organisation, they're essentially being brought in on every tender because all of the knowledge is in their head. It's also elsewhere in their files, but actually understanding that information and being able to pull it together, it has to be them doing it. Whereas Tendermole takes all of that away from them. So rather than having to do the work, they can just sign off on the work. Tendermole will do it. They can look through and they can say, yeah, okay, that looks fine. Top and tail it. Let's get it out. So it just gives time back to everybody in the office and it just lifts that cloud off them. And ultimately, hopefully, it enables people to win more new business, keeping everybody working.
That's awesome stuff. Rory, you're an absolute star. Thanks for giving up part of your afternoon for that. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, best of luck with the product. As I say, I've seen it up close a couple of times now, and I was impressed the first time. I'm even more impressed now. I wish you every success with it.
Thank you.